Most dating advice found online today focuses almost exclusively on younger women who are still in their 20s or early 30s. This is typically the period when the dating market is considered to be at its most active and traditional attraction is often at its biological peak. However, there is an entire population of mature women that rarely gets discussed with any real psychological depth or nuanced understanding. These are women over the age of 40 who have lived through a lifetime of complex experiences that have fundamentally reshaped their view of human connection. By the time a woman reaches the milestone of 40, she has accumulated a dense history of professional successes, personal disappointments, and profound wisdom. She is no longer operating from the same mental or emotional frequency as a 25-year-old who is still in the process of discovering her core identity. A woman after 40 knows exactly what she needs to survive and thrive, even if her external language for those needs has shifted over the years. Understanding what truly drives these women is not an exercise in making moral judgments, but about recognizing deep-seated psychological patterns of behavior. When you finally understand what someone is truly hungry for beneath the surface, you begin to anticipate how they will behave in every single interaction. The first thing every observer must realize is that the very nature of attraction undergoes a massive internal shift as a woman moves through midlife. In her younger years, dating is often driven by raw physical chemistry, social hierarchy, and the sheer excitement of building a potential future from scratch. By the time she reaches her 40s, those internal drivers become less about finding excitement and more about addressing specific voids in her present life. Life accumulates over time, and so do unmet needs, which start driving adult behavior in ways that were simply not present during her younger years. The real question for anyone dating in this demographic is no longer just about what she finds attractive on a surface or aesthetic level. The question becomes much more profound. What is she actually hungry for in the deepest parts of her soul? This specific psychological hunger takes 8 distinct forms, depending on her personal history, her wounds, and her unique inner psychology. The first pattern we must examine is the validation seeker, a woman whose identity has been significantly shaken by the inevitable passage of time. In her younger years, she likely received constant and effortless attention, where her physical appearance functioned as her primary social currency. As the decades pass and that automatic attention begins to diminish, she often faces a silent but devastating internal crisis regarding her inherent value. She finds herself competing for male attention with women who are 20 years younger, and on a purely physical level, that competition feels impossible to win. What she is chasing in a relationship now is often not romantic love itself, but tangible, recurring proof that she is still desirable and that she still matters. She responds with incredible intensity to compliments that acknowledge her intelligence, her refined taste, and her growing sense of cultural sophistication. These specific compliments land differently because they suggest a value that time, age, and gravity cannot easily take away from her. The validation seeker is looking for a mirror that reflects back a version of herself that is still vital, still visible, and still powerful in the world. You can notice this pattern clearly in her obsessive behavior on social media or in how she constantly compares her current self to photographs of her past. Nostalgia becomes her primary psychological coping mechanism, as she frequently references her younger years to stay tethered to a version of herself that felt more valuable. She's hungry for the gaze that tells her she is still the center of the room, even if the people in the room and the room itself have changed. The second pattern is the wounded attacher, a woman who is primarily driven by a desperate and often unconscious need for total emotional safety. She has likely been betrayed, abandoned, or profoundly disappointed by men who promised security, but never actually followed through on those promises. What she is chasing in the present is not passion, thrill, or a romantic spark, but a protector who feels stable, predictable, and consistently trustworthy. She attaches with startling speed to men who provide immediate emotional shelter, even if they are not the most exciting or charismatic partners available. The profound danger in this dynamic is that she often confuses the immediate relief of finally feeling safe with the long-term presence of genuine love. Once the original emotional wound begins to heal and the sense of safety is fully established, the gratitude she felt can start to fade away quite unexpectedly. She may realize far too late that she attached to a partner out of a temporary psychological emergency rather than a permanent emotional connection. You can spot the wounded attacher by how quickly she pushes for commitment, because to her, commitment represents the fortress she has been looking for. She is essentially looking for a nervous system regulator rather than a romantic equal. especially in the intense initial stages of the connection. The third pattern involves the woman stuck in waiting mode, who treats her current reality as nothing more than a temporary holding pattern. She has spent years, and perhaps even decades, living with the secret belief that her real, authentic life has not actually started yet. She maintains a deep-seated hope that something or someone is coming in the future that will fundamentally transform her entire existence. This woman might stay in a relationship for years, but she treats her partners as placeholders rather than permanent pillars of her life. They are considered nice enough for now, but they are not the ultimate prize or the transformative figure she is perpetually waiting for. Because her eyes are always focused on the horizon for something better, she is never fully emotionally available to the person standing right in front of her. What she is chasing is a dramatic psychological metamorphosis, or a man who will finally unlock the life she feels she was always meant to have. She is drawn to novelty, travel, and spontaneity because those things feed the fantasy that a total life change is still possible for her. The fundamental problem is that her imagined perfect relationship will always be superior to any actual relationship that exists in the messy real world. She remains loyal to an internal fantasy, which inevitably makes her emotionally disloyal to her current and tangible reality. The fantasy chaser is easy to attract with new experiences, but she is almost impossible to keep once the inevitable magic of novelty begins to fade. The fourth pattern is the perpetual dependent, a woman who never fully developed the necessary infrastructure of adult self-sufficiency. Her entire life has likely been structured around men, first her father, then boyfriends, then a husband, who handled the mechanics of her existence. They managed the complex finances, handled the difficult logistics, and made the heavy life decisions while she occupied a protected dependent role. Now, whether through a painful divorce, a loss, or changing life circumstances, she is facing a world she is simply not equipped to navigate on her own. She is terrified of her own independence and is actively chasing another handler to take over the day-to-day management of her life. She is looking for a protector provider who will restore the familiar, safe structure she has always lived within since her childhood. However, she often ends up resenting the very dynamic she needs because it constantly reminds her of her own perceived inadequacy. She might rebel against a stable, capable man because he feels too much like a controlling father figure, even though she desperately depends on him. The perpetual dependent wants to be taken care of while simultaneously wanting to be set free, creating a cycle of constant chaos in her relationships. She is chasing the feeling of being a child again, protected from the harsh realities of the world, while simultaneously resenting the lack of autonomy. The fifth pattern is the career-dominant woman, who has spent decades building the professional skills required to lead, compete, and maintain control. She is often highly successful and respected, but she struggles to switch off her executive mode the moment she leaves the office environment. She inadvertently manages her personal relationships using the same tools she uses for professional projects: decisiveness, cold logic, and total control. She struggles to yield control to a partner because yielding feels like a terrifying weakness she has not allowed herself for a very long time. She is chasing a partner she can truly respect, but she is deeply uncomfortable with not being the one in total charge of the relationship dynamic. She craves the ability to surrender and be led, but she instinctively rebels against leadership as soon as it is actually offered to her by a man. Beneath her formidable professional armor is a woman who desperately wants to feel safe enough to finally stop being the person in charge. The tragedy is that what she needs most is what she is least able to accept, because true trust requires a high degree of emotional vulnerability. If you date a career-dominant woman, she will test your strength and your boundaries constantly just to see if you can truly handle her intensity. She is looking for someone who is stronger than her armor, someone who has the authority to demand that she finally takes it off. The sixth pattern is the status recoverer, a woman who has experienced a significant social or financial decline in her personal life. She once lived in a certain world, occupied a specific social circle, and moved in environments that felt like her natural, deserved home. Something changed, perhaps a sudden divorce or a financial reversal, and now she is living a life that feels reduced and humiliating by comparison. What she is chasing is not just money, but a total restoration of the lifestyle and social identity she believes she belongs to by right. She is naturally and powerfully drawn to men who represent that lost world through visible markers of success and high social status. She attaches quickly to anyone who seems like a literal ticket back to the level of social standing she once occupied and deeply misses. She is essentially mourning a lost version of herself and is looking for a partner who can give that identity back to her through association. The danger for any man in this dynamic is that she may be more attracted to what you represent in society than to who you actually are. You become a role in her internal play, a necessary means to an end to get back to the version of herself she values most. The seventh pattern is the chronic searcher who stays in perpetual motion to avoid ever having to look at her true, unvarnished self. Her calendar is perpetually packed with workshops, spiritual retreats, and self-development programs that function as a form of sophisticated distraction. She truly believes that the next big breakthrough, the next deep insight, or the right spiritual experience will finally make her feel complete. In her relationships, she's often emotionally reactive and easily bored because she mistakes drama and chaos for the feeling of self-discovery. She cycles through connections quickly because she is always convinced that the next person might be the ultimate missing piece of her puzzle. Long-term stability feels like stagnation or a slow death to her, so she keeps running toward the next new philosophy, hobby, or social circle. She demands that you grow with her and match her constant, frantic evolution, even though her evolution has no clear destination or end goal. The chronic searcher brings both intense passion and absolute exhaustion to a relationship, leaving partners feeling drained and confused. She's chasing a feeling of wholeness that can never be found in an external experience, a program, or another human being. The eighth pattern is the woman who has hardened into cynical independence after being disappointed far too many times by the world. She has built a life that does not require a partner, and she takes immense defensive pride in the fact that she truly does not need anyone. Her toughness is very real, and it has successfully protected her from further harm, but it also functions as a wall that prevents any genuine intimacy. She does not know how to let someone in without feeling like she is losing her hard-won strength and her precious autonomy. To find connection without the risk of being hurt again, she's often drawn to men she perceives as less established, weaker, or younger. Choosing men she can fix, mentor, or rescue allows her to stay in a relationship while maintaining total psychological and emotional control. The armored caretaker is chasing intimacy through a back door by being the one who provides, rather than the one who has to be vulnerable and receive. She tells herself she just happens to attract broken men, but the pattern is actually a strategy to stay safe inside her own emotional fortress. By focusing entirely on his problems, she never has to face the vulnerability of her own unmet needs or her deep fear of rejection. What unites all of these 8 distinct patterns is a fundamental sense of lack that has accumulated over the course of several decades. Every woman I have described is missing something essential in her internal world that is driving her current dating and relationship behavior. The validation seeker lacks proof of her continued value, while the wounded attacher lacks a fundamental sense of existential safety. The career dominant lacks the psychological permission to surrender, and the armored caretaker lacks the basic ability to receive love. By the age of 40, these psychological lacks have often calcified into defining characteristics of her personality and her romantic style. When you truly understand what a person lacks, you understand exactly what they are chasing in a romantic partner. You can see these patterns if you pay very close attention to the recurring themes in her stories and what makes her most defensive. Much of what is called love in mature relationships is actually a deep, unaddressed psychological need seeking a reliable and consistent supplier. A connection based purely on need is intense and magnetic at the beginning, but it is inherently unstable over the long term. When the need is temporarily met or the original wound is partially healed, the attachment that felt like love can suddenly evaporate. The healthiest and most sustainable relationships are always built on the foundation of want rather than the compulsion of need. In a healthy dynamic, two people choose each other because they add significant value to an already complete life, not to fill a hole in it. Need creates a sense of desperation, anxiety, and control, while want creates a genuine and lasting appreciation for the other person. Understanding these patterns is not a cynical exercise. It is the absolute prerequisite for building a real, honest, and mature connection. When you understand what truly drives her behavior, you can meet her where she is with genuine compassion, patience, and clarity. You can provide real value as a partner rather than just performing a role of attraction to keep her interested for a short time. Most relationship failures in the over 40 demographic come from providing what you think she wants, while completely missing what she actually needs. If you can genuinely meet the underlying need without exploiting it, the connection has a real chance to evolve into something permanent and beautiful. However, you must remain aware of the inherent limitations and the potential shelf life of an attachment that is rooted in a specific need. Always look for the quality of self awareness in a partner, because the healthiest women are those who understand their own psychological patterns. A woman who is consciously working with her own history is far more stable than one who is being unknowingly trapped and driven by it. People pursue what they need to survive emotionally, and being honest about that reality is the true foundation of mutual respect. When you operate with clarity rather than confusion, you gain the power to make real, intentional, and healthy choices in your dating life. That is the true goal of understanding these 8 patterns, moving from a state of blind reaction to a state of conscious intention. A connection that actually works over the long haul is always built on a foundation of deep psychological and emotional understanding. Thank you for listening to this comprehensive analysis of the mature dating and relationship landscape. I truly hope these insights help you navigate your own relationships with more wisdom, more empathy, and significantly less frustration. Always keep looking beneath the surface of behavior to find the hidden truth of what drives the people in your life. Success in love is not about finding a perfect person who has no lacks, but about deeply understanding the person you actually find. May your journey toward connection be guided by absolute clarity and a spirit of genuine, patient understanding. Good luck as you move forward in your life, and remember to always take care of your heart and your mind in the process.